Withholding judgment. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So we had a little bit of an issue recently. This is on the Long White Cloud Qigong website with our emails. Some of you may have been affected, hopefully not too many. But for a couple of days, we just didn't receive our emails. And not only that, our websites went down as well. Fortunately, not the main course platform where all of the online course materials are, so people who are currently enrolled in courses were able to still access those and carry on with things as normal. But yeah, some of the other websites went down. Bit frustrating, as these situations can be. Technology is great when it works well, but pretty frustrating when it doesn't. But I'll just tell you a little bit about sort of a little experience at the start of that whole issue, which made me think of this, about this value of withholding judgment. So how I first became aware that we even had an issue was one evening. I'd finished some work on some different things, and I sent through an email to my assistant. So that's Tihana. Tihana's gonna, she's gonna see this. So hi, Tihana. She is going to be making the thumbnail and the description and the time codes for this. And so I sent through an email with something I wanted her to do, a relatively simple task, shouldn't take too long. And she's in almost the opposite time zone as me, because I'm in New Zealand right now. She is based in Montenegro. And so, you know, me sending an email in the evening, she'll get that sometime in her morning. And then, you know, she's got all day to get done, you know, amongst the other things she's doing, but a relatively easy task. And so then the next morning I checked and the task wasn't done. And then, you know, I thought, well, you know, maybe she's sort of getting towards the end of her day. Maybe she hasn't done it yet, so I'll give it a little bit more time. But later on, task still wasn't done, and hadn't heard got an email from her or anything like that. And so I was like, okay. This is a bit frustrating, a bit annoying, because ideally I did tell her that this was, you know, to do it as soon as possible, because things would go a little bit smoother if it was ready to go the next day. Not the end of the world by any means, but it was like, you know, as soon as possible, please. And so I thought, oh man, what's going on? Is she just, you know, not replying? What's going on here? And so fortunately, I had another way of getting in contact with her. And I was able to message her using a messaging app and say, hey, just wondering, have you got my email about this task that I wanted you to do? And then she saw the message a little bit later on and messaged back and said, no, I haven't seen the email. I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit weird. And then she made another comment about not having received, I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically, with a couple of messages back and forth, we figured out she hadn't received any emails that day. So, ooh, okay. So now this is cause for concern, and that led to me investigating further, figuring out what's going on. But it was just a little example because, you know, it was a little bit irritating, like not having the task done when I'd hoped it to be done by. And I could have perhaps easily jumped to conclusions and got quite upset about this, and you know, and that could have well, not been pleasant for my assistant if I had been really upset about that, and could have led to a breakdown in communication between us, and then might have taken even longer to find out what was going on, what was actually the problem with the email system, and would have been really bad just by jumping to a conclusion too quickly. And so fortunately, that's not what I did. I did feel a little bit of irritation. I'm human. I feel irritation at things sometimes. But I was like, hey, you know, let me find out some more information here first to find out what's going on, rather than assuming that it was something bad. And that led to being able to resolve the issue not as fast as I would have liked. I'm going to make another vlog about that because it took a bit longer than really it should have to resolve. But at least to get onto the track of being able to fix this relatively soon. Another example, another technology-related example that I can think of, which is, I don't know, I think demonstrates this sort of principle quite well, is one. It's actually from quite a while ago. I remember it's not exactly the early days of the internet, but quite some time ago when I guess social media and all that sort of thing is constantly evolving. But where I guess at a period of time where it was starting to become more common for people to get sucked in by different scams on social media and to maybe click on a link which then, either got their account hacked, and so then whoever hacked them was, spamming out, different links and posts, from this person's account that they'd hacked, or just get, into some kind of dodgy something from clicking on a bad link, and that was starting to happen more at this stage. And I remember back then thinking and wondering, because sometimes I'd see people who I knew quite well and who I thought were quite sensible, and quite grounded, and, and sometimes I would see them falling prey to some of these different scams and things. And because you'd see it, because it would pop up in your feed where, now you're getting these dodgy posts from people, and think like, it's just like so uncharacteristic of them, and like that seems really, really weird that somehow they would have fallen for this, or whatever it was. And then one day when I was doing something, I can't remember if it was on my phone or on my computer. So one way or another, either I was doing stuff on my phone or on my computer. And sometimes when you're either scrolling or clicking through things, and then whatever site or app you're on, either something closes really quickly or opens when you're not expecting it to, or something updates on the page, and so everything shifts on the page just while you're loading it. And while I was doing this, like moving through some stuff, and then I found myself with either my finger or my mouse, I don't remember which one it was, like just above, almost above, clicking on a link that looked very dodgy. Now, I hadn't intended to do that, but just because I was moving through a whole lot of things and things moved on the page, and if I hadn't, stopped myself just that little bit earlier, I might have been another one of these people who somehow got caught by one of these scammers, one of these dodgy links, and, not because I was fooled by it, but just because of the way things sometimes move around on your screen, and I could have unfortunately fallen into that. And again, I remember that being like a little moment for me to just think, and it's not that I had necessarily judged these people, but I'd wondered. I thought, like, what is going on there? And to realize hey, there's all sorts of ways that someone can end up, in this case, with the dodgy links or whatever it is. And it might not be even that they were fooled about it. It was just, it could have been something else that somehow that ended up happening, because it almost happened to me. Fortunately it didn't, but it almost did. And that gave me a little perspective on okay, there's all sorts of reasons to just sometimes withhold judgment, to give things time until you really know what's going on. And then the only kind of judgment you should make is not necessarily a moral judgment or anything like that, but a judgment of, okay, what's the course of action here, because obviously sometimes there's things you need to deal with, and you do need to make judgments. How am I going to deal with something? I think this applies widely in every aspect of our life. So I've given a couple of little technology-related examples, but it applies to so many different things in our lives. There's so many things going on around us all the time, sometimes on a very small scale and other times on a very large scale. And so often we don't have complete information. Sometimes we might think we have a lot of information, but it's still not complete. And so often we can easily be missing something really important that would give us a fuller understanding, a richer understanding of what's going on, and be able to make better judgments. So I think particularly with a lot of the political things going on in the world right now, a lot of unfortunate political things going on in the world right now, I think we need to be really careful not to be too quick to judge. If we don't really know all of the details, there's so much behind a lot of these situations, and particularly for individual people's circumstances as to why they might be acting in certain ways, or why they might not even be acting the way we think they are, but there's an impression and that impression isn't accurate. But to recognize we don't know what we don't know. And to be able to sort of step back and just observe and gather more information until such point as, again, if there's actions we need to take, of course we need to make judgments about the actions we take at some point. But to be able to not be too quick to leap into something and to judge what's going on with other people, why they're acting a certain way and what they're doing. General principle of life, of course. I think there is a tie-in with Qigong as well. I think through Qigong practice, we do tend to develop an ability to be less reactive. Certainly in my experience for myself, and also with other people who I've observed, that through their practice, they do develop an ability to observe more before taking action. And it's not even that it takes longer to take action, because sometimes action needs to be taken very quickly. But I think because the nature of Qigong is we're observing quite subtle things that come as a result of the action of many things combined within our body, within our mind, within our environment. And we're observing all of these together to really understand what's going on with our energy. And this process of observing closely and being able to take our time to really notice what's going on, in many ways it can actually help us to observe things more quickly, so we are able to move into action more quickly if we need to, but at the same time to not react too quickly. It's one of those, well, I guess it's not that subtle in a way in terms of how it affects your life, but it's one of those things that maybe you don't think of as a direct outcome of Qigong practice, but it tends to develop that way over time. Anyway, that's the vlog for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you on another one soon.